morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, August 3rd, 2016. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by Bucknuts contributor Brandon Castel. Brandon, can't begin Sunday. I know you're going to be there covering it with me and Steve Hellwagon. It's very exciting. I mean, just days away. The season is here, or at least, the start of camp is here. So let's just talk about maybe some predictions for the season here. Starting with top breakout players for the Buckeyes this fall. Let's, offensively and defensively, pick one on each side of the ball. Brandon, who are going to be the top breakout players for the Buckeyes this fall?
Yeah, it's a great question, and, Dave, I'm excited for the start of this season. I know there's always buzz around seasons when you're going in and you're thinking, national championship, and you're thinking, this team has got the makings of winning the Big Ten championship, and now with the college football playoff of being a huge factor. And I'm not saying that this team doesn't have those type of aspirations or couldn't be on that level, but for me, there's always a little bit different kind of excitement going into a season where you've got so many young guys, so much young talent, so many guys who are fighting for jobs who, we really haven't seen those guys play a lot before. We really haven't seen, the guys who are going to play in the secondary, the Marshawn Lattimores and Damon Webbs and Damon Arnett's, and we really haven't seen the guys who are going to get a chance to now step into the starting lineup and step into the spotlight. Getting to see some of these young guys on the defensive line after, a couple years of dominance up front with Joey Bosa and Adolphus Washington and, the whole defensive, front that we have seen for the last few years. I'm personally excited, for Sunday to go out and watch some of these guys play, see some of the young guys running around. Really see some of these young receivers catching footballs from J.T. Barrett, see what these guys can do. I think we're going to see somebody emerge from this wide receiver crew. Obviously, they're going to have somebody step up and fill what Michael Thomas and Jalen Marshall did last year. Austin Mack is a guy I liked in the spring. If he can stay in the mix, I really like what he brings. I don't know that I would say he's going to have a monster season in terms of statistics, but I think he'll make an impact. I keep saying, coming back to a guy like KJ Hill, a guy that we didn't get to see much of in the spring. I don't know that, again, breakout, is he going to have big numbers? Probably not. If you're looking at, breakout guy on offense, you're probably looking at a Curtis Samuel or Mike Weber in terms of numbers. But, I think there's going to be some fun players that emerge from that wide receiver group that, we really didn't see these guys before. And, they're really going to come out and make a name for themselves. Defensively, again, I named a bunch of guys in the secondary, but, I think where you're going to see a breakout guy is really up front on the defensive line. Last year, I don't think you can count Sam Hubbard and Tyquan Lewis just because we saw those guys a little bit last year. But, I think a guy like Jalen Holmes is a guy who could get in the mix, play inside and out, be a factor in those rush man lineups, and really maybe not, again, big numbers at the end of the year, but I think people will know who he is and will be excited about him.
Yeah, you hit on some very good points there. I'm going to go with Paris Campbell on offense. And again, like you said, I don't think, like you mentioned with KJ Hill, which I think is a very good pick, I could see him having a breakout year. I don't think Paris Campbell is going to set the world on fire with stats. I just think he's going to be a big part of this offense this year, and he's going to play some H-back. He's going to play some wide receiver. And, he started the opener last year as a redshirt freshman. Now, there were some suspensions. That's part of the reason he started the opener, and some guys were hurt. But still, as a redshirt freshman, he started the opener last year, had, some knee trouble throughout the year, some tendonitis, just never really was able to get better. But I know the coaches really like Paris Campbell. He's a fast kid. And he's now filled out, so I think Paris Campbell's going to have a nice year on offense. But there's so many guys that are candidates. That's really a tough call. And defensively, I'm going to go with Malik Hooker. I don't even know if that even counts because maybe he had his breakout in the spring, but I think we have to remember that this is a guy who hasn't even started a game yet at Ohio State. I think everybody's just assuming he's going to be a good player. I certainly am assuming he's going to be a good player. I know this is a bold statement, but I think he's going to be an upgrade over Tyvis Powell. And Tyvis had a great career at Ohio State, and I wish him well in the NFL. Hopefully he can stick, and be on an active roster, not just a practice squad this year. But I do think Malik Hooker is going to be an upgrade over Tyvis Powell, so I'm going to say he's going to be the breakout player defensively. And then next question for you, Brandon. Right tackle is very interesting in my view. It looks like it's going to be Isaiah Prince. He ran with the first team throughout the spring. I asked Urban Meyer at Media Days in Chicago about Isaiah Prince, and he said, he's right now the starting right tackle. But Malcolm Pridgeon, I don't know if Urban would recruit a JUCO player unless he thought there was a good chance that young man would start. I think we're seeing a good battle there at right tackle between Isaiah Prince and Malcolm Pridgeon, or maybe not. I mean, maybe you think it's going to be Prince's job no matter what. Who do you think is going to win that job between Prince and Pridgeon?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Again, one of the reasons I'm excited for this fall camp and this season in particular is things like that, where you're going in and you got a really talented kid in Isaiah Prince, and by all accounts, highly recruited. Teammates have had a lot of good things to say about him. Ready to really step into the spotlight, but yet here comes this junior college guy and a guy who's a little bit older, a little bit, has played a little bit more, advanced level football than Prince. So it's going to be interesting to see. Now, I haven't seen Pridgeon, on this football team, on this football field, going against Sam Hubbard, going against Tyquan Lewis. I haven't seen that yet, so it's hard for me to jump in and say I think this kid's going to come in and push him. But I think where we're at right now with Prince, I think the door is certainly open. You look at Jamarco Jones, I think has established himself and solidified himself as the starting, left tackle going into the season. But with Prince, I think they've said there's been enough comments to say, hey, this kid looks good. We're seeing a lot of good things out of him, but the door's still open. But he's still got to work hard. But he's still got to go out and cement his starting job in the fall. So I think to me, that tells me that, maybe physically they love the tools they see and they think this kid could be a really good player, but he hasn't quite taken that leap yet. He's only a sophomore, but he hasn't quite taken that leap. And that they want to see him take another step in the fall, another step in fall camp before he locks down that starting job. So I do ultimately think it'll be Isaiah Prince, but, I wouldn't be surprised to see some rotating. I wouldn't be surprised to see Pridgeon get in there, and really push him. I think that will force Prince to kind of take that next step and take his game to the next level, which I think is good for everyone up front.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think it will be Isaiah Prince when it comes down to it, but it will not surprise me if Malcolm Pridgeon ends up beating him out. But if Prince does win the right tackle job, I mean, as you mentioned, Pridgeon could rotate in there, and Pridgeon could possibly factor in the mix at guard, which leads me to my next question. Are you buying Michael Jordan as the starting guard opposite Billy Price? Might Malcolm Pridgeon work his way in there? Matt Burrell, somebody else, Demetrius Knox? Are you buying Michael Jordan as a starting guard as a true freshman?
Dave, that's a great question, and if you would have asked me this at the end of the spring or, midway through the spring or going into the spring game, I probably would have said no. That, I'm just not buying this guy yet. I mean, he looks like a good player. You've heard some good things about him. Obviously he was a really, really solid football player coming out of high school. He's got great size. But I still probably would have said no because I felt like here's this true freshman coming in, working his way into the starting lineup in the spring. It just felt like there were other guys, like you said, Burrell and Knox and some of the other guys who have been around for a year or 2 years. And, you really felt like those guys were going to get the first shot to win that starting job. And so I would have told you in the spring that him getting into the starting lineup was really more about motivating some of these other guys, pushing them to get better and to take their game to the next level if they wanted to win a starting job. I'm not sure I buy that anymore. Everything that I've heard and every indication that I've gotten from, the coaching staff to the players seems to be that, this Jordan kid is legit. He's a beast. He's a guy that has looked really good in practice, to the point where he's been pushing around some of the older guys in the defensive line. And, I think they really like this kid. I think that they are looking at him as, the best man for the job at the moment. Now, could that change? Yeah, absolutely. We'll see what Pridgeon brings to the table. And, Matt Burrell's probably the guy that could get in there and really push as well. But I'm buying it. If you ask me today, I say that he will be the starting guard because I've heard enough to believe that it's not just motivation for the other guys. They're really believing that this kid, has what it takes.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I am buying it too. I think Michael Jordan is just better than Demetrius Knox and Matt Burrell, it sounds like. And I'm with you. The master motivator, Urban Meyer, I thought maybe it was a motivational tactic in the spring, using that psychology degree that he likes to use. And he's not shy about doing that, but I don't think that's the case. I think Michael Jordan is just really that good. Now, the one caveat is, like I said, I'll be very surprised if Burrell or Knox ends up beating out Michael Jordan. The one guy that won't shock me again is Malcolm Pridgeon. I think he's a guy, if he doesn't win the right tackle job, he will give Michael Jordan a run for his money for the guard spot. Urban Meyer even alluded to that at media days in Chicago. So, again, maybe that's another position where they could rotate a little bit early in the year until they get, because you don't want to rotate eventually. Everybody knows this, that's a football fan. You don't want to rotate throughout the year, but early in the year, there's nothing wrong with doing that. So you know you have your 5 guys and you can just roll with those 5 guys the rest of the year. You definitely want to have your 5 by that Oklahoma game week 3. So maybe that for his first couple of games they can rotate a little bit. But I think Malcolm Pridgeon will give him a run. But I do think Michael Jordan will be the first true freshman offensive lineman to start from day one since Orlando Pace for the Buckeyes back in 1994. So we'll hope it works out the exact same way for Ohio State. All right, next question. We got 2 more on the docket here. Yeah, just no pressure, Michael Jordan. You already have the name Michael Jordan. Now we're comparing you to Orlando Pace. So have fun with that.
Talking about chasing ghosts.
yeah, there you go.
Goodness.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
The Ghost of Chicago and the Ghost from Sandusky.
Yep.
2 more questions for you, B-Cast. All right, sticking with the defensive, or going back to the defensive side of the ball, I should say. Will Jerome Baker give Chris Worley a serious run for the starting job at walkout linebacker, or is that Worley's job all the way, in your opinion?
I mean, obviously, I think that you will see him make a big push. I think that anyone who's watched this kid play knows that Jerome Baker's got some serious talent, some serious athletic ability. I think this kid has a world of potential. So no, I don't think it's a lockdown that it's Worley's job, to get out there and start and the whole thing's over heading into fall camp. That's what I said earlier. I think this is going to be a fun fall camp to watch some of these battles. I do think Worley's out in front and has got the edge, and I think the coaches would like for him to play. I think they like what he brings to the table. I think they like where he's at in his career and what he's worked to get there. And, it's tempting to be wild and to be, to be swayed and tempted by Baker's athletic ability. There's certainly, there's certainly something there to say, hey, I would love to see what this kid could do if we got him on the field. So, it would not surprise me if you see more and more of him getting into the mix and more of them trying to find ways to get him on the field because, this kid is obviously a football player that can impact the game. And so, those are the kind of guys you want. What made guys like Darren Lee and, Joey Bosa and Von Bell and those guys so good? Yeah, they were consistent, but they made impacts on the game. They made big impacts on the game. So if Chris Worley can go out there and make some impacts, then I think he'll hold on to the job. If he's just going to go out there and be steady and kind of, be in his position, they need that too. That's the role that Josh Perry played a lot of times. And so they do need that too. But I think there will be some, there'll be some temptation to want to get Baker on the field. So I think it'll be fun to watch. I think it will be a battle, but, I think Worley will be the guy who takes the field, opening day, at that position.
Yeah, I think you're completely on point there. I think it's going to be a tough decision for the coaches. I think Jerome Baker's going to make it a tough decision, but I think if Chris Worley stays healthy, he'll be the guy out there on September 3rd against Bowling Green to start the game. But that's one to watch, though. I'm very high on Jerome Baker. I just don't see how he's going to just be a regular backup. I think they're going to find ways to get him on the field this year. And who knows? These things have a way of working themselves out through injuries, through guys not performing. So we'll see what happens. But I'm very high on Jerome Baker. But it sounds like Chris Worley, the coaches are very high on him. So good problems to have when you're trying to replace a stud like Darren Lee. You got 2, very capable guys ready to fight for the job. All right, last question for you, sir. Might Curtis Samuel beat out Mike Weber for the starting running back job? It seems like everybody's assuming it's Mike Weber's job, and he will open camp, I think, as the starter. But Curtis Samuel gave Ezekiel Elliott a run for his money at running back when Curtis Samuel was a true freshman. And we know how good Zeke was that year. He was pretty good as a sophomore, Zeke Elliott. Could Curtis Samuel end up beating out Mike Weber for the starting running back job, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I love this question, and anybody who follows, my stuff or has listened to what I have to say knows that I'm the biggest Curtis Samuel fan there is. I was pushing for him to get more playing time last year. I was surprised obviously Zeke, it was hard to take Zeke off the field. It was hard to take the ball out of his hand. I know there was a temptation to want to get Braxton Miller, the football, and then, Curtis Samuel had some injury issues last year. So there were a lot of things that factored into why his production was down, why his opportunities were down last year. But, in my mind, I think he is the single most impactful weapon they have on offense outside of JT Barrett in terms of his explosiveness, in terms of, what he can do in terms of changing the game. I've seen enough in the time that I've seen him to believe that this kid can be a real game changer. The reason I didn't pick him as breakout player on offense was, just outright was I don't know how many carries. I don't know how healthy he's going to be. But if he's healthy and he's getting carries, I think this kid can have a monster season. I think that depending on how they use him, I think he can be a real weapon for them in a number of ways. And I do think that he can be a tailback and a guy who can carry the ball to the backfield. Now, there seems to be a little bit of a hesitancy to say this guy's going to get 20 carries a game. Anytime that Urban talks about him with the coaches, it seems they're in that 10 to 15 range. So that to me suggests they see him playing a number of roles and they see him, kind of getting the ball in a lot of different ways versus we're going to have him outright compete with Mike Weber for the starting running back job. But hey, this kid is talented. I'm interested to see what Mike Weber brings. I think, you're a better football team if you have Weber and Samuel on the field. But, it wouldn't surprise me if he's so good in camp and so much better than everyone else that they realize they've got to get this kid, 20 touches a game. And if that's the case, then I do think you'll see more and more tailback opportunities for him. But I think they've got some other guys they'd like to see in the mix. Obviously they've got Antonio Williams, they've got Dontre Wilson, you mentioned Paris Campbell. They've got a lot of guys they'd like to see get in the mix. So will be interesting to watch, but again, I'm a big Curtis Samuel fan. I do think that he's primed for a huge year if he gets the touches.
I concur. You and I are agreeing way too much here. We're not embracing debate. I don't know if this makes for good
radio. I know. You know what? I'm gonna start saying more, giving more hot takes when I come on here, and things I know that you would disagree with. I'm gonna.
Let's just we can just make up things that we don't really even believe. But just for the sake of argument, we're going to start arguing them. Like, I think Urban Meyer's really overrated as a head coach. Like, no, that's a really good argument to make. Embrace debate, BCast. But great stuff as always out of Brandon Castel. Again, he will be at Ohio State covering the first day of camp on Sunday. I will be there. Steve Helhagen will be there. The freshmen will go, the true freshmen and the newcomers. I imagine Malcolm Pridgeon will practice with the freshmen at least for the first day. They have a separate practice at 9 a.m. and then the returning players, including the redshirt freshmen, will go at 3:15. The 9 o'clock practice, at least the first 30 minutes is open to the media. We'll see. Maybe they'll let us stay for longer than that. So we'll have videos, we'll have pictures, we'll have a practice report for you. And then we're not sure if the returning players practice at 3:15 will be open, but we are for sure getting Urban Meyer after practice at 5:30. So we'll have a video and a story on what Urban Meyer has to say. So make sure you keep it locked to Bucknuts. Again, that is all on Sunday, the first day of camp. Thanks again to Brandon Castel, and thanks for the listeners for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great day. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.